Welcome to the lost Tactician, where, the grit of survival meets the depth of history. Today, we journey into the unforgiving American frontier to uncover a story rarely told, the brutal, ingenious battle against an invisible enemy that threatened to halt westward expansion before it truly began. This isn't a tale of gunfighters or cavalry charges. This is the story of timber, chemistry, and the desperate pioneers who transformed fragile softwood into the backbone of a nation. Picture the Great Plains in 1869 as the Transcontinental Railroad claws its way across a landscape that just devours everything organic. Every railroad tie laid into the earth is, a ticking clock. Pine and Douglas fir, abundant and workable, seem like nature's gift to the expansion, until the moisture seeps in, until the beetles burrow, until the fungal rot turns solid beams into crumbling powder within 5 years. Settlers arriving with European timber wisdom find their knowledge, honestly, useless here. The old world's slow seasoning methods and oak construction traditions cannot sustain the breakneck pace of American ambition. Telegraph poles topple, mine shafts collapse, and entire settlements watch their foundations disintegrate. The frontier faces a crisis of infrastructure, and without durable timber, the dream of manifest destiny becomes impossible. The scale of demand is, frankly, staggering. By the 1870s, American railroads require over 70 million ties annually. Mining operations consume countless timbers, shoring up tunnels thousands of feet underground. Fencing the open range means millions of posts driven into soil that breeds decay. Traditional European preservatives like tar and pitch are prohibitively expensive when hauled across wilderness. The frontier needs solutions that are immediate, effective, and, brutally efficient, no matter the cost to human health or the environment. The first attempts are primitively ingenious. Ranchers char fence posts over open flames, creating a carbonized armor approximately 1.5 centimeters deep. The scorched wood smolders with the acrid smell of burning resin as pioneers discover what ancient civilizations knew. Fire creates a barrier that moisture and insects cannot easily penetrate. It's crude, labor-intensive, but, surprisingly effective for isolated homesteads where chemical treatments remain a distant fantasy. Then comes the revolution. In the year 1836, a patent for coal tar creosote transforms everything. This thick, black, pungent distillate of coal tar becomes, the lifeblood of Western expansion. Railroad companies set up treatment facilities near timber sources where these massive cylindrical tanks, known as retorts, dominate the landscape, almost like industrial cathedrals. Workers manhandle raw-cut ties into these vessels, seal them up, and flood the chambers with creosote that's been heated until it flows like dark honey. The results are, honestly, transformative. Treated ties that would have rotted in 5 years now endure for 30 or more, their surfaces glistening with toxic amber that repels every organism that tries to feed on the wood. Zinc chloride arrives as another miracle solution, thanks to William Burnett's 1838 patent. The burnetizing process forces this chemical deep into softwood fibers under immense pressure, making timber both rot-resistant and less flammable, which is, a critical advantage when steam locomotives are constantly showering sparks across wooden infrastructure. The treated wood comes out pale and chemical-laden, ready to withstand decades of punishment in the harshest conditions anyone could imagine. Step into a frontier treatment plant and the assault on the senses is immediate. The air hangs thick with creosote vapor that burns the lungs and stings the eyes. Workers wade through pools of chemicals without any protection, their skin stained permanently black, their clothes soaked in toxins. These men operate massive pressure vessels that could explode if mishandled, wrestle with timber that weighs hundreds of pounds, and breathe air so contaminated that chronic illness becomes, well, an occupational certainty. There are no safety regulations, no worker protections, no understanding of long-term chemical exposure. The job pays because it kills slowly but certainly. The environmental devastation is equally catastrophic, but, entirely invisible to contemporary observers. Treatment facilities dump spent chemicals directly into rivers and soil. Creosote pools seep into groundwater. Mercury from kyanizing operations poisons entire watersheds. The frontier operates on a philosophy of inexhaustible resources and disposable landscapes. Whatever price nature pays seems irrelevant, measured against the imperative of expansion. Economic forces drive this machinery of destruction. Treated timber commands premium prices. Railroad companies calculate that spending dollars on preservation saves hundreds in replacement costs. Mining operations deep underground cannot afford structural failures. The financial incentives overwhelm any nascent concerns about worker welfare or environmental consequences. The West is being built, and the human and ecological costs are simply written into the ledger as acceptable expenses. Yet from this brutality emerges genuine innovation. The full-cell Bethel process applies vacuum technology to timber treatment, first evacuating air from wood cells before flooding them completely with preservative. Later refinements develop empty cell processes, the Ruping and Lowry methods, that use compressed air to push excess creosote back out, coating only cell walls and dramatically reducing chemical costs while maintaining effectiveness. The boucherie process demonstrates frontier ingenuity at its finest. Workers force copper sulfate preservatives through freshly cut, unpeeled trees using simple hydrostatic pressure, driving chemicals lengthwise through sapwood before the timber even reaches a mill. For Douglas fir poles in the Pacific Northwest, the 1884 Boltonizing technique boils green wood under vacuum, simultaneously removing moisture and injecting creosote in a single violent transformation. Walk through any historic Western town and, well, you're surrounded by testaments to these forgotten methods. Railroad trestles spanning mountain gorges still stand after 140 years. Mined timbers extracted from abandoned shafts remain sound despite decades underground. Telegraph poles along forgotten trails continue supporting wires they were meant to carry for only a decade. These structures are monuments to pioneers who turned vulnerable softwood into materials rivaling stone for longevity. The challenges faced by frontier engineers haven't disappeared, they've merely evolved. Modern material science still wrestles with balancing wood preservation against environmental responsibility. Today's pressure-treated lumber uses chromated copper arsenate or newer copper azyl formulations, each representing incremental improvements over the brutal chemicals of the 1800s. Contemporary sustainable forestry debates about preservative efficacy versus toxicity directly descend from questions first confronted beside those frontier retorts filled with bubbling creosote. The unheralded chemists and timber workers of the Wild West literally constructed America's physical expansion. Their forgotten legacy exists in every modern building code requiring treated lumber for ground contact, in every environmental regulation governing wood preservatives, in the accumulated knowledge that transforms softwood from a temporary material into permanent infrastructure. Understanding their methods, brutal, toxic, yet undeniably effective, reminds us that progress often emerges from desperate necessity rather than comfortable innovation. If this journey into America's forgotten industrial frontier has captivated you, if the intersection of survival, chemistry, and history resonates with your curiosity, then, like this video, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe to The Lost Tactician. Together we'll continue excavating the overlooked stories of endurance and ingenuity that forged the modern world.